Hello, this is Dave Sugarbaker, and today is the 19th day of April 2026. And I'm going to talk about listening today. This is from Matthew. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on rock. The rain fell, the floods came, and the wind blew, and it beat on that house, but it did not fall because it was founded on rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain fell, and the floods came, and the wind blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. I sometimes watch that TV show Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates Jr. It's interesting to watch celebrities learn something about their ancestry that they didn't know. But that's not the real reason why I tune in. The real reason is that I like to watch Henry Louis Gates Jr. listen. He's a good listener. And he often doesn't use words, he uses interjections, and he'll sit there and he'll say, oh, ah. Sometimes he'll get real wordy and he'll say something like, me too, or yes. It goes by pretty fast, but I really enjoy it. He gives evidence that he is actively listening. He shows that he understands. He demonstrates compassion and connection. I did a lot of counseling in Berkeley. I did over 4,000 weddings in 27 years. I was at Northbrae Community Church during that time. I met with every couple that I was to marry. I also met with families regarding funeral services for a family member. I did between 30 and 50 funeral services per year for those 27 years. So I did a lot of listening to people who wanted to tell me how they were feeling. As I was meeting with these people, I noticed that I was making a lot of listening noises, just like Henry Louis Gates. It sounds odd, but these were ways of saying, I'm listening, I'm still awake, and I'm paying attention. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with you, but I hear you. I watched an interview on the PBS NewsHour with one of the creators of what's going to be a hot new movie musical called In the Heights. And this writer spoke about the importance of appreciating the life experience of one's elders. She got together with her uncle and, with this in mind, asked him about his experience in Vietnam during the war. Now, her uncle was usually mute about his war years. He just wouldn't talk about it. But this time, somehow, he was ready and willing. And she said he got tears in his eyes as the stories poured out of him, stories of fear and pain, of confusion and loss. I imagine it was a holy moment for both of them. And it takes courage to speak, especially about what's important. But it takes intelligence and respect and a little bit of humility to listen well. A week later, she said her uncle called her. He said he felt lighter than he had felt in years. Wow. This really struck me. The young woman had an increased understanding of her uncle's life, and her uncle had had an opportunity to unburden himself of some old fears and his long-held grief and loss. Listening well brought healing. Her uncle felt unburdened. Jesus says in the four Gospels repeatedly, He who has ears to hear, listen. And there's a difference between hearing the sounds produced by somebody else and really listening for meaning and for emotional gravity. That great philosopher Winnie the Pooh says, if the person you're talking to doesn't appear to be listening, be patient. It may simply be that he has a small piece of fluff in his ear. Or I would add, there may be too much fluff in between his ears. It takes intelligence and respect and a little humility to listen well. Listening is one of the few things that has a positive effect on grief. There's very little that we can say that will be helpful to a grieving person except, I'm ready to listen when you're ready to talk. The theologian Paul Tillich says, the first duty of love is to listen. I looked on the internet and found a Turkish proverb that says, listen 100 times, ponder 1,000 times, speak once. The best medicine for grief is to tell the story of the loss to an empathetic listener. Why? Because coming to terms with loss involves a lot of sorting out. It involves rehearsing the story over and over again to deal with the sometimes unreality of it all, to search for ways to have avoided the loss. And ultimately, it was not possible to avoid the loss, to feel the anger at the injustice of it all, to cope with the overwhelming sadness of the loss, and to search for meaning in the senselessness of it all. The job of the listener is not to solve any problems or to point out the important parts of the story. The job of the listener is to walk through the valley of the shadow of death with the one who is grieving. It's not a happy place to be. You may not be comfortable with the story that needs to be told, but the important thing is you are there. You are listening. Sometimes in telling the story to an intelligent, respectful listener, the one who grieves will hear something or learn something. They may feel a little unburdened by the telling of their story, just as the uncle who had served in Vietnam felt lighter than he had felt in years. I've heard people say, having listened to the story of another's loss, I didn't have anything to say. It may be that there isn't anything that needs saying. Maybe, huh, uh-huh. My rule for those who want to listen well is this: don't try to fix anything. Just listen. Winston Churchill said, courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. Listening well requires intelligence, patience, and compassion. There's another dimension to this listening business. To be a good, active, compassionate listener, you have to make room in your soul to take in what the person you're listening to has to say. I would like to think that I'm a good listener, but that's not always true. There are times when I'm full up, and I have no more room to take in what another has to say. It's not a defect, it's not a flaw, it's just a fact. Sometimes my emotional in-basket is full and overflowing, and there's no room for more. When that happens, and someone wants to share something really important that's happened to them, I have to be ready to do one of two things. One, I have to confess that now is not a good time for me to do that kind of quality listening, and that's a hard thing to do. Or two, the second thing I could do, I have to sort through my in-basket and set aside some of the hot items that I thought couldn't wait. I have to put those hot items in some inner cupboard to be dealt with later. And that works sometimes. And then I'll have the room, I will have made room to hear what this other has to say. That's why we call listening a gift. We make room within ourselves to hear what another has to communicate. One of the definitions of love that I used to share with my wedding couples was, love is the situation in which the other person's well-being is as important to you as your own. One of the ways we communicate that love is by listening well. Now, God bless you. If this has been of value to you, I hope you'll pass it around. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this, and take care. I'll see you soon.